Have you ever wondered what the final moments in the life of a pope, the leader of millions of faithful, would be like? It wasn't the dazzling splendor of the Vatican or the solemn ceremonies, but that quiet moment that was truly memorable. Here are the two English translation options, depending on context. Today, I want to tell you a story few have ever heard. A story that makes your heart ache with deep compassion and empathy. This is the story of the noble friendship of Pope Francis, the spiritual father of the Catholic Church, and the devoted nurse Massimiliano Strati, who tenderly held his hand in his final moments. How could an ordinary nurse become the Pope's savior? In the moment facing death, why did Brother Francisco only want to send a word of thanks to his friend? And why does his simple farewell carve so deeply into the heart, a bittersweet ache that leaves us utterly undone? Stay by my side, for this story will not only touch your heart but also make you reflect. Going back to that moment, on the morning of April 21, 2020, at Gemelli Hospital in Rome, everything began as usual like any other day. The hallway was quiet, save for the steady hum of medical equipment and the soft footsteps of nurses changing shifts. However, in a special room, a magical relationship is about to close with a deeply moving ending. At 5:30 in the morning, as the first light of dawn flickered, Pope Francisco lay on his sickbed. His once vigorous body was now exhausted after months of battling severe pneumonia. His breath was hurried and labored, his face pale, his eyes brimming with emotion. Eyes that had once gazed straight into the faces of presidents as well as the poor. Still maintaining my composure, I focused on observing the man who had barely left his side for weeks. That person is Massimiliano Strati, a 56-year-old Italian nurse, whose relationship with the Pope extends far beyond ordinary professional bounds. Strati is not just an ordinary healthcare worker. With over 30 years of devoted service caring for the popes, his skillful hands and kind heart have left a unique mark on Vatican history. But his relationship with Pope Francis is the most profound legacy he left behind. Their journey officially began in July 2021, when Pope Francis had to undergo emergency surgery for severe diverticulitis. This surgery is quite complex, requiring the removal of a segment of the colon. Many people were concerned about the Pope's recovery, as he was already 84 years old at the time. Yet, during those perilous days, it was Strati who meticulously coordinated the care for his lordship with the utmost attention to every detail. One afternoon, as Strati was adjusting the IV drip for the Pope during his recovery, the Pope suddenly gripped his wrist with an astonishingly strong force. Eyes, whispering words that etched the profound bond between them, the one who had saved his father. Strati was naturally humble and tried to decline the praise, but Francisco insisted and wouldn't take no for an answer. No, I listened when others could not speak. The Lord used my hands to act. From that moment on, a deeper feeling than mere professional admiration blossomed between them. A true friendship is built on trust, genuine sharing, and mutual appreciation. After that, Duke Francisco told his close advisors that Strati had the heart of a true healer. A person who not only cares for the body but also understands the soul. Looking back at the reign of His Excellency Francisco, his decision in 2022 to appoint Strati became a pivotal milestone. Assuming the role of personal healthcare coordinator has clearly demonstrated your admirable qualities. Unlike previous popes who typically selected doctors for this position, Pope Francis chose a nurse instead. This decision reflects his lifelong commitment to honoring those who contribute quietly, often without recognition. During a private audience in Massimiliano, Pope Francis stated, "The Father realized that the face of Christ, the healer, does not appear in grand gestures, but lies hidden within the simple acts of daily love." The bond between the two men grew stronger through simple, intimate moments rarely seen by the public. When Mr. Francisco suffered from sciatica, every time he stood up, it caused him great pain. It was Strati who created a series of gentle stretching movements to help ease the pain. On sleepless nights filled with torment, Pope Strati would often read sacred texts aloud to seek peace. His warm, calm voice was like a gentle sedative, soothing his troubled mind. By February 2025, Francisco's health had begun to deteriorate severely. It was Strati who first noticed the subtle changes in his breathing. and firmly demanded immediate medical attention. The diagnostic results confirm that His Excellency has bilateral pneumonia, a particularly dangerous condition for someone of Fancyco's age, and has a history of respiratory diseases. Then came 38 arduous days of hospitalization, pushed both their endurance to the absolute limit. Throughout those long, endless weeks, Stray Eddie scarcely left his side for even a moment. According to sources from the Vatican, he often slept on a fold-out bed placed in the Pope's room. Awake in the moment his breath stirs ever so slightly. He meticulously monitored the medication schedule, adjusted the oxygen levels appropriately, and regularly checked the vital signs. And perhaps the most important thing is steadfast companionship, like a friend always ready by your side. There is something truly sacred in the act of caring for the sick. Stray Eddie once confided to a colleague during a rare break, "It's not just about the medicine. It's about using your presence to say that you." A deeply moving moment occurred in early March 2025. About 3 weeks after being hospitalized, Fancyco had an extremely exhausting night due to a high fever and severe coughing fits. The morning light streamed through the hospital window blinds, casting brilliant golden streaks across the room. The Pope seems more pensive than usual. Stray Eddie was adjusting the pillow for his lordship when suddenly, Lord Fancyco gripped his hand with unimaginable strength. "You are my guardian angel, Massimiliano. The Lord sent me to guide you through this valley." Stray Eddie was too choked with emotion to speak and could only nod silently. Then, he confided in a fellow nurse colleague, saying, "I feel I'm not yet worthy of that trust, but I'll do my best to live up to your expectations." From late March to early April, Fancyco Germany seemed to have gradually regained its strength. The fever has subsided, and blood oxygen levels have significantly improved. The doctors are now cautiously considering the possibility of transferring him back to his residence at the Santa Marta guest house within the Vatican grounds. During this period, the conversations between Duke Fancyco and Stray Eddie grew increasingly profound. The Pope recounts his childhood memories in Argentina, the early days of becoming a priest, and the unexpected journey that led him to the papacy. "I never wished to become Pope, but my father always strove to be the Pope that God desired." Stray Eddie cherished these conversations, deeply aware that they were both a privilege and a sacred responsibility. Though they always maintained professional boundaries, their relationship had gone far beyond the traditional caregiver-patient dynamic. In mid-April, although the doctors remained optimistic, those close to Lord Fancyco noticed clear signs that he himself had sensed his earthly journey was nearing its end. He began tidying up his papers, wrote a few short lines to close friends, and spent more time in prayer. However, he did not reveal anything specific about death to those around him, perhaps only to Stray Eddie. Is heaven truly as beautiful as they say? That faith goes far beyond anything we could imagine, Your Holiness. I thought as much, but I believe the faces we shall meet up there are even more beautiful than that place. Easter Sunday in 2025 will fall on April 20th. Despite his frail health, Pope Fancyco expressed a burning desire to make his final appearance before the faithful in St. Peter's Square. The doctors strongly objected, fearing that exertion could be life-threatening, endangering his already weakened lungs. Stray Eddie found himself in a dilemma. On one side was professional caution, and on the other was understanding the spiritual desire of the Pope, who yearned for one final connection with his flock. That morning, as they discussed this possibility, Lord Fancyco looked at him with a gaze both resolute and fragile. "I don't know if Father can do it." Stray Eddie gazed intently at the man before him, his frail frame belied by eyes that shone with the fire of a resilient spirit. "Your Holiness, if we take all necessary precautions, if the timeline is not too rushed, and if I can always remain by your side, then I believe this is feasible." Stray Eddie made a decision and devised an extremely meticulous, unprecedented healthcare plan. He arranged portable oxygen tanks, emergency medication, and strategically positioned medical teams along the route. Mr. Dick then skillfully adjusted the papal vehicle to ensure it met Fancyco's medical needs while avoiding public attention. The moment afterward was etched into the minds of all who witnessed it. As the papal vehicle slowly moved around St. Peter's Square, the crowd initially buzzed with surprise at the unexpected appearance, then gradually settled into a solemn, hushed atmosphere filled with reverence. Lord Francisco may appear frail, but his eyes blaze brightly as he raises his hand to bestow blessings. His smile, though weary, still radiated a deep and serene calm. Strati stood quietly behind the car, holding a first aid kit, his gaze fixed intently on the Pope. For most people, he was just an ordinary Vatican employee. But in reality, he was the one who made this final public moment possible. Mr. Francisco returned to the hospital exhausted, but his heart was filled with joy. Strati helped him lie down on the bed and carefully reconnected the monitoring device. The Pope raised his head to look at him, his eyes shining with genuine emotion. "Thank you for taking me to the square, my child. Your voice is my breath. Because of you, today I have lived. I vow to stay by your holiness's side forever." Neither of them expected those words to come true later, nor did they imagine their time together would be so fleeting. The morning of April 21st that day was just as ordinary as any other morning. Strati arrived early for his shift. Before 5 a.m. he checked Duke Francisco's medical records, then quietly sat down in the chair beside the hospital bed. The Pope is sound asleep, his breathing steady and more stable than in previous days. At around 5:30 in the morning, Duke Francisco gently opened his eyes and woke up. He seemed slightly flustered for a moment, then fixed his gaze intently on Strati's face. The nurse immediately noticed something was wrong. The Pope's expression subtly shifted ever so slightly. His breath also stirred with a faint tremor. With years of experience, Strati had a bad feeling. Just as he reached out to press the button to call the doctor, Pope Francisco suddenly fell ill, an event that Vatican officials later described as a sudden stroke. The next stage will lead to heart failure. His eyes widened slightly, as if he had realized what was happening. In a lucid moment on the fragile boundary between life and death, Lord Francisco mustered his last ounce of strength to perform one meaningful act before departing this world. He slowly raised his trembling hand and gave a solemn, gentle wave, the kind of familiar papal gesture the world often saw during blessings or processions. That's not an elaborate farewell, but a simple, heartfelt goodbye reserved for the ones I cherish the most. His eyes were now brimming with tears, fixed intently on Strati. In a moment of startling clarity, he softly uttered his final words. "Thank you, my child, my friend. We shall meet again in the house of the Lord." Strati, her heart bleeding yet overflowing with love, clasped the Pope's hand and answered in a resolute voice despite the tears streaming down her face. At this moment, Father Ton, may you rest in peace. Just minutes later, Father Francisco fell into a coma. When the medical team arrived, he had peacefully passed away in silence. As the Vatican later announced, everything happened very quickly. He passed away peacefully, without suffering. When news of Duke Francisco's passing spread worldwide by the end of the day, global leaders sent their deepest condolences. The crowd gathered in St. Peter's Square, the sound of bells echoing throughout Rome. Commentators often speak of his legacy with deep admiration, his profound compassion, his dedication to defending the poor, his efforts to reform the Church, and his special concern for environmental protection. But in the quiet corner of Gemelli Hospital, Massimiliano Strati stood silently by the window of the empty room. The morning light spilled over the vacant bed, where no one lay anymore. In his final moments, he quietly handed that gift to Strati, a wordless gesture between kindred spirits. The story between Duke Francisco and Massimiliano Strati is moving not only because of their final farewell but also due to the depth of the extraordinary bond they shared. In a world obsessed with power, status, and fame, these two men chose different paths. One sat on the throne of St. Peter, while the other devoted his entire life to serving at the bedside of the sick. They found in each other the purest connection between human beings. That bond served as a reminder that when life comes to an end, fame and power lose all meaning. What remains eternal is the sincerity in every relationship, profound gratitude, and the love we share for one another. Duke Francisco, throughout his reign, always upheld compassion and human dignity. He lived fully by those values until the very last moment of his life. From a relationship with a lover, I became his friend. It might be a simple wave goodbye, a solemn papal blessing, or just a warm greeting between two friends. This passage holds a profound lesson for all of us. It reminds us of a universal truth. The most meaningful legacy in life is not built from grand achievements or accumulated wealth. They touched in the heart's presence, gratitude, and the courage to bid farewell in serenity. We see a life fully lived not ending in fear, but in peace. Not with regret but with gratitude for the journey we shared. As the sun rose once more over the sky of Rome that morning, the warm light streamed through the hospital window, falling onto the empty bed where Duc Fancyco had taken his last breath. Strati's mother finally let herself break down, tears falling like petals. The cross he holds in his hand, worn smooth over the years by the Pope's prayers, will forever remain the most precious treasure of his life. As a sacred relic of the religious leader, yet as dear as a keepsake among friends. In the days that followed, as the world expressed its sorrow over the passing of the Pope and prepared for solemn state funeral rites, Strati returned to his daily routine at the hospital. Many people often ask him about his experiences with Duc Fancyco, hoping to hear insider stories or shocking revelations. But Strati seldom spoke of that final moment, for he cherished the sacred intimacy of their farewell. When you shared anything, he always taught me that gratitude is the most powerful prayer, and his final words were simply 2 words: thank you. The story of Duc Fancyco and Massimiliano Strati reminds us that true kindness does not come from grand declarations or elaborate rituals, but from the genuine connection between people. The passage teaches us that even those in the most exalted positions in the world are, at heart, just ordinary people, still yearning for comfort, friendship, and the preservation of their dignity until life's final moments. Perhaps the most beautiful legacy this relationship leaves behind is the lesson of living fully with gratitude and letting go peacefully when parting ways. The passage reminds us that no matter our station in life, we are all ultimately travelers on the same journey, shared and uplifted by the companions beside us. In the final farewell, the tree gently swayed its branches like a soft whisper of gratitude. Pope Francis not only concludes an extraordinary life, but also leaves humanity with a final lesson, perhaps his most profound one. Gratitude transcends even death, becoming the bridge that connects this world to what awaits beyond. Always remember, on your own life's journey, sometimes the most powerful words you can offer to those who have loved and cared for you are silence. Until we meet again, may we all learn to live fully, so that when the moment of parting arrives, we can bid farewell with a serene soul, a heart full of gratitude and peace, just as Saint Francis did in his final sacred moments beside his guardian angel.